Hello, hello. It is Saturday and this is a story time for me. I'm going to be telling you about my effort to find Jane Roberts' grave in Elmira, New York. This is going back to 1995. I had been living in Florida for a little while. I had bought my first sailboat. I was learning to sail it. I've told you at least one of the ridiculous stories having to do with having to swim after my boat. And this is October. I decided I would spend a little bit of time visiting with a friend in Pennsylvania. We were going to be staying at her dad's. I got there a day early. And I thought, well, I am so close now to Elmira. And I had for years and years, I had the intention of paying homage to Jane Roberts' grave. Jane is the author of the Seth material, S-E-T-H. And it is like a cornerstone, a foundation, a huge part of my philosophy at this point. I came upon the material in 1977, immediately recognized the value and beauty of it, and by now have given, I don't know, hundreds of Seth books to people that I love and care about to help them on their way with this teaching, if they have a mind for it. Anyway, this is October, mid-October, I guess, and I am 125 miles away from Elmira. I thought that's, I am so close, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do this. So I drive to Elmira, and I'm driving up and down the streets thinking I'm this an enormously wonderful psychic. Of course I'm gonna find Jane's grave, I have to. So as I'm driving, I see a sign for Mark Twain's grave in this cemetery in Elmira, and I'm thinking, what is Mark Twain doing in Elmira? Shouldn't he be in Mississippi or someplace? Missouri, Hannibal, or I don't know. Anyway, I went to the cemetery. I found Mark Twain's grave. He happens to be my second favorite author. Jane is my first. And so I paid homage to Mark's grave and read about Libby Langdon, his wife, who was an Elmira girl, and I didn't know that about him. I hadn't really read up on his history, his life. So but I couldn't find Jane. Jane was definitely not in that cemetery. It was a very beautiful old cemetery. And so then I thought, well, she was a Catholic, and so there may be a Catholic cemetery in Elmira that I should go check out. So I did that. I found the Catholic cemetery, and there was a lady running it. And I talked to her, and she said, Jane Roberts? No, I'd never heard that name. And I'm thinking, I said that to her. I said, you don't know about Jane Roberts? You live in Elmira, you don't know about Jane? Oh my God. So by the time I got done talking to her, about half an hour later, she was ready to go to the nearest bookstore and buy all of Jane's books. I had gotten her so enthusiastic. But anyway, I hadn't found Jane's grave, so my psychic abilities needed some help. So I went to the local library, and I saw that this particular funeral home had handled Jane's remains. So then I went and found the funeral home, and it was this gorgeous, gorgeous two-story powder blue. It was just really heavenly powder blue, painted, gorgeous building. And anyway, the woman that was running that funeral home said, I had a divorce 3 years ago, and my husband took most of our paperwork, so I'm not even sure that I'm going to be able to find out anything about this person. But she said, the name sounds familiar. So she went, and she came back with this little metal box with card files in there. And she said, oh yeah, here it is. She said, Jane Roberts. She said, oh, Jane wasn't buried. She was cremated. And then she said something about Pinnacle Road, and I wrote that down surreptitiously, since my psychic abilities weren't kicking in too well. And so next I found my way to Pinnacle Road, and Pinnacle Road was not very long, maybe 3 or 4 blocks. Anyway, I had gotten onto Pinnacle Road, and the first opportunity I had to take a left, I went up a little cul-de-sac and parked the car, and there had been a lady raking leaves across from where I parked. So I walked over there and I said, do you by any chance happen to know Jane Roberts and Rob Butts, where they might live. And she said, honey, you parked right in front of the house. So I had managed to park myself on Pinnacle Road, right directly in front of their front door. At this point, a woman came out of Jane and Rob's house, and she came running over to me, and she said, you can't park there. We're expecting company. And I said, well, I've arrived. So I was very cheeky, right? And just then the man, and I realized it was Rob, came out of the house. And I said, hi. I said, I am just trying to figure out what happened to Jane's remains. I came to pay homage at her grave, if there is a grave. And he said, come on in. So then I visited with Rob for an hour. It was a good hour and a half, I think. And he showed me he had a fireplace with a mantle, and above the mantle he had this urn. And Jane's ashes were in the urn. He said, when I pass, I'm going to have my ashes mixed with hers. Isn't that lovely? Oh. And then we're going to be having the urn buried. But I had a delightful visit with him. I told him about all the different things that I had gotten to do in my life because of their material, how much it meant to me, how profoundly I treasure it. It was a delightful, delightful visit. And then a couple of days later, 3 days later, I was coming back into Florida again, and I just realized I cannot deal with the humidity and the heat down here. I just can't do it. I just didn't feel, my body didn't feel happy with it. And so I decided I would move back to New Mexico. And I rented a Ryder truck. And then I took off in the morning with my stuff. I had my car in back of the Ryder truck on the tow dolly. And when I got up to the top of Florida, around Interstate 10, I had to stop for gas. So I decided to check the oil. And when I did, there was no oil showing on the dipstick, which really kind of freaked me out. But then I put in 2 quarts, checked again, nothing showing on the dipstick, put in two more, nothing showing on the dipstick. Got down on my hands and knees, looked underneath. Is it running out down the bottom? Nope, nothing. I thought, okay, I don't know. I've put 4 quarts into the engine now. So I had stopped there overnight, and then the next day, about halfway between not quite Jacksonville and Baton Rouge, I gassed up again, checked the oil once more. Again, nothing is showing on the dipstick, so I put in some more oil. Still nothing showing. It didn't matter how much oil I put in, nothing showed. So I thought, okay, well, I made it to Baton Rouge and stayed there for the night. And then early the next morning, I went to put gas in the truck, and I ended up putting in more oil because it wasn't showing on the dipstick. So then I'm going over this kind of steep ridge coming out of Baton Rouge, and all of a sudden these clouds of black smoke come out of the back of the truck. I couldn't see my car and the tow dolly in back of me anymore. It was just a horrendous quantity of black smoke coming out. I'm thinking, oh my God, I've blown the engine. What the hell am I going to do? The depot for Ryder was like at least 2.5, 3 hours away from where I was then. So I was hoping I could make it with whatever was going on with the engine. I wasn't sure, and so I went more slowly. And thank God I made it to the Ryder depot. And when they checked, they discovered that somebody had put the wrong dipstick into the truck. There was no way that dipstick would ever measure any of the oil in the engine. It was way too short. And so I had put at least 8 quarts, at least 8, maybe even 10, into that engine. And it's really a wonder that I didn't blow it to smithereens. But I did actually make it back to Santa Fe, thank God. So that's the story about finding Jane's grave and the Ryder truck. And life is made up of stories. If we look back over our lives, countless different stories, and how do we react to these facts in our life? What do we do with them? So right at this point now, I am endeavoring to take a look at my body again and see what it needs. And along those lines, I have just recently started drinking a whole lot more water than I ever have. I'm just not that thirsty. I'm not thirsty. I have to force myself to drink it. But I realize that my body is pretty dehydrated. And so I have to do this. I'm also reading about happiness now because given the current political situation and some personal issues in my life, I have to work harder than I normally would to bring the joy back up in my life. If I wake up in a disgruntled mood or an anxious mood, I have to spend extra time, with affirmations, positive affirmations, meditation. I spend a good hour every morning after I wake up adjusting my attitude. It needs work some days. And that's what we have to do, in order to not fall prey to, oh my gosh, the things that I'm reading about on the internet lately. Trump is going to institute thought police. You're not even supposed to think a thought that's not complimentary of him. This does not sound at all like America. It does not sound like the America I signed up for. And of course, being a naturalized citizen, according to Trump, you can revoke citizenship. He's even talking about revoking citizenship for Native Americans. He's such an asshole. I mean, I'm sorry. I probably shouldn't use this kind of language, but he is so sick. The man is just totally sick. And he is destroying what America has mostly been about, which is freedom of speech, freedom of action, right? We have a unique place on the planet. Not that it's been perfect. The United States has made lots of mistakes. It's caused lots of suffering on the planet. But this is an unusual time for all of us. And do whatever you need to do to keep your mental health going. Keep yourself in check, okay? Yeah. All right. Well, it's a weekend. I hope you folks are having a good time, doing some fun things, being good to each other, and remember there's nothing more important on this whole planet than love. That goes for yourself as well as for the others in your life and the ones that are not in your life. All right. Wishing you a lovely what's left of your weekend and a good mental health to go with it. Ciao.